A man walks into a police station with his head profusely bleeding. Officer, what happened, man? My wife hit me in the head. Officer, why? Man, her parents came over unexpectedly, so she asked me to go and get them something. Officer, and? Man, got them a taxi. Teacher, Jay, why are you down? Down to da. Jay, because my mom is at the hospital and my dad's at the police station. Teacher, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, dear. Do you want to go home? Jay, yes, please. After Jay has left the classroom, the teacher asks the other classmates, why is Jay's father at the police station and his mother at the hospital? Classmate, because his father is a policeman and his mom's a nurse. 3 bodies are delivered to the mortuary one day. Each of them has a great big smile on their face. The coroner examines the bodies and then calls the police to tell them what has happened. Well, the first body is a Frenchman who had a heart attack while making love to his mistress, hence the smile, says the coroner. Second body's a Scotsman, 25, won the lottery and spent all his money on whiskey, died of alcohol poisoning, hence the smile. Ah, says the coroner, this is the most unusual one. Sean, the Irishman, 30, struck by lightning. Why is he smiling then? He thought he was having his picture taken. A man wakes up heavily bandaged in a hospital bed after a short coma. The doctor leans over and says, "You're lucky to be alive. Can you tell me what happened?" The man groans and replies, "Well, the last thing I remember, I was lying on the couch with my wife, watching a movie. I wanted a beer, so I asked her if she could grab one for me. She told me to get it myself. A few minutes later," he continues, "she got a text message, but her phone was across the room, so she stood up to go get it. I saw my chance," he smirks. "I grabbed my phone and sent her a message. Since you're already up, can you bring me that beer?" He sighs and looks around the room. "Next thing I remember, I woke up here." There comes a time when a woman just has to trust her husband. After a girls' night out, a wife comes home late, quietly opens the door to her bedroom, and is shocked to see 4 legs sticking out from under the blanket instead of 2. She grabs a baseball bat, rushes in, and starts beating the blanket with all her might. The covered bodies groan in protest, but she doesn't stop. Satisfied, she leaves the room and heads to the kitchen for a drink. As she walks in, she spots her husband casually sitting at the table, reading a magazine. "Hi, darling," he says, not missing a beat. "Your parents came to visit, so I let them stay in our bedroom. Did you get a chance to say hello to them?" In the middle of a biology lesson, the teacher looked at the class and asked, "All right, class, what is something that has hair all around it?" Before anyone could think, Johnny smirked and raised his hand. "Ma'am, are you sure you want me to answer that?" The teacher's face turned red. "No, Johnny, you keep quiet." Johnny chuckled and leaned back. "Well, the answer is an eye. But now I'm really curious what you were thinking." A man checked into a hotel. There was a computer in his room, so he decided to send an email to his wife. However, he accidentally typed a wrong email address, and without realizing his error, he sent the email. Somewhere in Houston, a widow had just returned from her husband's funeral. The widow decided to check her email, expecting condolence messages from relatives and friends. After reading the first message, she fainted. The widow's son rushed into the room, found his mother on the floor, and saw the computer screen which read, "To my loving wife. I know you're surprised to hear from me. They have computers here, and we are allowed to send emails to our loved ones. I've just reached and have been checked in. I see that everything has been prepared for your arrival tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Hope your journey is as uneventful as mine was." Steve and Anna, a middle-aged couple, were enjoying dinner at a fancy restaurant when, out of nowhere, a drop-dead, gorgeous young woman walks up to their table, plants a passionate kiss on Steve and says, "See you later, darling." Anna stares daggers at Steve. Who was that? Steve shrugs and says, I'm not gonna lie, she's my mistress. Anna slams her fork down. That's it. I've had enough. I want a divorce. Steve calmly replies, I understand, but just remember, no more shopping in Paris, no winters in Barbados, no summers in Tuscany, no Lexus or Infiniti in the driveway, and no yacht club membership. Totally your call, though. Just then, their friend Jim walks in with a bombshell on his arm. Anna leans over and whispers, Who's that with Jim? Steve replies, That's his mistress. Anna sips her wine and smiles. Ours is prettier. A husband and wife are shopping at their local supermarket. The husband picks up a case of Budweiser and tosses it in the cart. The wife immediately asks, What do you think you're doing? They're on sale, only $10 for 24 cans. He replies, Put them back. We can't afford that, she demands. A few aisles down, the wife picks up a $20 jar of face cream and adds it to the cart. The husband raises an eyebrow. What do you think you're doing? It's my face cream. It makes me look beautiful, she says. The husband, without missing a beat, replies, So does 24 cans of Budweiser, and it's half the price. My wife and her friend were having a conversation about how useless men are when my wife said, They can't do two things at once. At this, I interrupted and said, Actually, I can. Give me an example, she replied. Well, while I was making love to you last night, I was thinking about your friend. 3 Englishmen walk into a bar and spot a Welshman sitting alone at a table. One fellow said to the others, Let's pick a fight with that Welshman over there. His partner replied, Wait, we don't want to be arrested. Let's make him start the fight. The 3rd Englishman said, Wait here, chaps. I know how to do it. He went over to the Welshman and said, St. David was a flippin' sissy. To this the Welshman replied, Ah, well, you don't say, and calmly resumed drinking his beer. The 2nd Englishman now tried his luck and said to the Welshman, St. David was a stupid fool that wore a dress. The Welshman again replied, You're very sharp, you don't say, and calmly resumed drinking his beer. The last Englishman told his friends he knew how to rile the Welshman and bounced up to the table and yelled, St. David was an Englishman. The Welshman replied calmly, That's what your mates were trying to tell me. Over drinks one afternoon, a buddy of mine and I were discussing former loves. I told him that I once broke up with a girl long ago because she had a seemingly incurable speech impediment. George said, Jimmy, I'm shocked. I never know you to be one to be prejudiced against handicaps. What was the girl's problem? Taking a sip, I paused and reflected. She couldn't say yes. A man sees a sign in front of a house. Talking dog for sale. Curious, he knocks, and the owner invites him in. The man asks the dog, So, what have you done in your life? The dog looks up and says, Well, I've led rescue missions in avalanches, worked with the police to catch criminals, and even helped find survivors after earthquakes. Now, I'm just enjoying retirement. Stunned, the man asks the owner, How much for the dog? The owner says, $10. $10? Why so cheap? The owner shakes his head. Because he's a damn liar. He didn't do any of that stuff. A famous inspirational speaker said, Best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman who wasn't my wife. Audience was in shock and silence. He added, She was my mother. A big round of pause and laughter. A very daring husband tried to crack this at home. After dinner, he said loudly to his wife in the kitchen, Best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman who wasn't my wife. Standing for a moment, trying to recall the second line of that speaker. By the time he gained his senses, he was on a hospital bed, recovering from burns of boiling water. Moral here, don't copy if you can't paste. Nelson Mandela is at home, watching TV when there's a knock at the door. He opens it to find a Japanese delivery man holding a clipboard, pointing to a truck full of car exhausts in the driveway. "You sign. You sign," the man insists. Mandela, completely baffled, shakes his head. "I didn't order any car parts," and slams the door. The next day, the delivery man is back, this time with a truck full of brake pads. "You sign, he shouts, shoving the clipboard forward. Mandela, now annoyed, sends him away again. On the third day, 2 trucks show up, packed with car parts. The delivery man is back at the door, clipboard in hand, screaming, "You sign! You sign!" Mandela finally loses it. "Listen, I don't want any car parts. You've got the wrong person." The delivery man squints at his clipboard, then asks, "Ah, are you not Nissan main dealer?" A newlywed couple had just moved into their first home. The husband is slouched on the couch, glued to a football game. During a commercial break, his wife says, "Honey, can you change the light bulb in the hallway after the game?" He smirks and replies, "Do I look like a damn electrician?" A few days later, she says, "The fridge door's busted. Can you fix it?" He shrugs. "Do I look like a damn appliance repairman?" She tries one more time. "At least fix the broken step by the front door. Someone's going to break their neck." He scoffs. "I'm not a damn carpenter either." "What do I look like, Home Depot? I'm going to the pub." A few hours and beers later, guilt kicks in. He stumbles home expecting the house to be in pieces. But surprise, the hallway light is on. The fridge door works. The step is fixed. Shocked, he asks, "How did all this get done?" His wife says, "Well, after you stormed out, I sat outside and cried. A nice young man walked by and asked what was wrong. When I told him, he said he'd fix everything if I either baked him a fancy cake or slept with him." The husband stares at her. "So, you baked him a cake?" She looks him dead in the eyes. "Do I look like a damn pastry chef?" Boom. Roasted. Jenny gets her first period in the middle of class. Flustered and unsure of what's happening, her teacher sends her home to talk to her parents. On her way back, she's crossing a bridge, sniffling and wiping her eyes. That's when she runs into little Johnny, who's skipping school. Curious, he asks, "Hey, why are you crying?" Through her tears, she sobs, I'm bleeding, and I don't know why." Johnny, wide-eyed, says, "Show me." Not knowing what else to do, she obliges. Johnny takes one look and screams, "Holy crap! No wonder you're bleeding. Somebody chopped your thing off." Little Johnny's teacher decided to have a contest. She got up in front of all the students and announced, "From now on, every Thursday afternoon before dismissal, I will ask a question. If someone in the class can give me the correct answer, there will be no class on Friday." Well, the kids went wild. They thought this is going to be so easy. So that next Thursday, the teacher asked, "How many grains of sand are on the beach at Daytona Beach?" Not one kid could answer. "Well," she said, "we will have class tomorrow." The next week, Thursday came, and she asked, "How many drops of water have gone over the Niagara Falls since it started?" The kids could not answer. She said, "We will be having class tomorrow since no one knows the answer." This went on for a couple of more weeks until little Johnny came up with an idea. The next Thursday, he put his plan into action. As the teacher got ready to ask the question, she turned her back to the students. When she did, little Johnny rolled 2 black balls up the aisle right to her feet. As she turned around and saw them, she asked, "Who is the comedian with the 2 black balls?" Little Johnny answered loudly, "Bill Cosby, and I'll see you Monday, teacher," as he walked out of the classroom. My next-door neighbor is a 90-year-old man suffering from Alzheimer's. Every morning at 9 a.m., he knocks on my door and asks me if I've seen his wife. Which means every morning at 9 a.m., I have to explain to a 90-year-old man suffering from Alzheimer's that his wife has been dead for several years. I could move. I could just not answer the door. But it's worth it to me to answer that door every morning at 9 a.m. and tell this 90-year-old man suffering from Alzheimer's that his wife is dead, just to see the smile on his face. An engineer was unemployed for a long time. He could not find a job, so he opened a medical clinic and puts a sign up outside. Get your treatment for $500. If not treated, get back $1,000. One doctor thinks this is a good opportunity to earn $1,000 and goes to his clinic. Doctor: I have lost taste in my mouth. Engineer: Nurse, please bring medicine from box 22 and put 3 drops in the patient's mouth. Doctor: This is gasoline. Engineer: Congratulations, you've got your taste back. That will be $500. The doctor gets annoyed and goes back after a couple of days later to recover his money. Doctor: I have lost my memory. I cannot remember anything. Engineer: Nurse, please bring medicine from box 22 and put 3 drops in the patient's mouth. Doctor: But that is gasoline. Engineer: Congratulations. You've got your memory back. That will be $500. The doctor leaves angrily and comes back after several more days. Doctor: My eyesight has become weak. Engineer: Well, I don't have any medicine for this. Take this $1,000. Doctor: But this is $500. Engineer: Congratulations, you got your vision back. That will be $500. 3 sisters were all getting married within a few months of each other. Their mom, a bit nervous, made them promise to send a postcard from their honeymoon with just a few words describing their first impressions of married life. A few days after the first wedding, a postcard arrived from Hawaii. It read simply, Nescafe. Puzzled, Mom grabbed the Nescafe jar from the kitchen and read the label, good to the last drop. Mom blushed, but she was happy for her daughter. A week later, the second postcard arrived from the Maldives. It read, Rothmans. Mom headed straight for her husband's pack of cigarettes and found the tagline, King size, super strong. She blushed again, but she was thrilled. The third daughter flew off to New Zealand for her honeymoon. A week went by. Nothing. 2 weeks. Still nothing. A month later, a postcard finally arrived with shaky handwriting. It read simply, Air New Zealand. Mum took out her latest travel magazine, flipped through the pages, fearing the worst, and finally found the ad for Air NZ. 10 times a day, 7 days a week, in all directions. A nursing assistant, a floor nurse, and a charge nurse from a small nursing home were taking their lunch break in the break room. Suddenly, a woman dressed in silk scarves and sparkling jewelry walked in. I am Gina the Great, she announced proudly. I am so pleased with the way you've taken care of my aunt that I will grant you each one wish. With a wave of her hand and a puff of smoke, the room filled with flowers, fruit, and bottles of champagne, proving she really had the power. The nurses quickly argued over who would get the first wish. The nursing assistant jumped in. I wish I were on a tropical beach with handsome men feeding me fruit and tending to my every need. With a flash and a puff of smoke, she was gone. Next, the floor nurse spoke up. I wish I were rich, retired, and living in a luxury ski chalet with well-groomed men serving me cocoa and pastries. Another puff of smoke, and she vanished. Finally, Gina turned to the charge nurse. And you? What is your wish? The charge nurse smiled and said, I want those 2 back on the floor after lunch break. My neighbor found out her dog was having trouble hearing, so she took it to the vet. The vet examined the dog and found the issue was hair blocking its ears. He cleaned them out, and suddenly the dog could hear just fine. He told her, if you want to keep this from happening again, just use some Imac hair remover and rub it in its ears once a month. So she heads to the pharmacy to buy some Imac. At the counter, the pharmacist says, if you're using this under your arms, Ian, avoid deodorant for a few days. The woman shakes her head. I'm not using it under my arms. The pharmacist nods. If it's for your legs, don't shave for a couple of days. She replies, I'm not using it on my legs either. If you must know, it's for my schnauzer. The pharmacist pauses, then leans in and says, in that case, stay off your bicycle for a week. A sweet old lady from Texas decided to take a solo day of sightseeing in Mexico before her adult sons arrived for vacation. That evening, she treated herself to a beautiful little restaurant and ordered a tequila while enjoying the view. At the next table, a couple was served a fancy dish, beautifully plated with two enormous, meatballs. Curious, the lady called the waiter over and asked, Excuse me, what is that? The waiter smiled and said, Ah, Senora, that is cojones de toro, a special delicacy from the bullfight this morning. Very rare, very famous. The lady paused, raised an eyebrow, and said, You know what? I'm feeling adventurous. I'll take one. The waiter leaned in gently. I'm very sorry, Senora. There's only one order per day. One bullfight, one bull. Not discouraged, she came back early the next day and proudly placed her order. That evening, they brought out the dish. It was beautifully served, but noticeably smaller than what she remembered seeing the night before. She took a bite, absolutely delicious, but then motioned to the waiter. These are fantastic, she said politely, but they seem a lot smaller than yesterday's. Why is that? The waiter gave a little shrug and smiled. Si, senora. Sometimes the bull wins. In a Toronto elementary school, a teacher was talking to her class about identity and pride. All right, class, she said cheerfully. If you're Canadian, raise your hand. Every student threw their hand into the air, except one little girl named Kristen. The teacher looked surprised. Kristen, why didn't you raise your hand? Kristen smiled politely and replied, Because I'm not Canadian. Oh? Then what are you? Asked the teacher. I'm American, said Kristen proudly. The teacher nodded. Interesting. Can you tell us why? Kristen replied, Well, my parents are American, so that's what I am too. The teacher thought for a moment, then asked gently, If your parents were both amazing bakers, what would you be? Kristen grinned and said, Then I'd be a cupcake.